Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. Let's begin with a nice, refreshing tonic of royalty because their majesties have been in Crathie Kirk. King Cosy Socks is in the house. Oh, how we love it. King Cosy Socks, and there they were, looking absolutely resplendent, I thought, in blues and reds and greens after returning from the state visit to Italy, which was an absolute triumph, wasn't it? It really was a triumph. But here they were, and they were there at Crathie Kirk for the service, but also to hear a new commission, a piece of music called The Weather of My Being, composed by Paul Mellor for the 20th anniversary celebrations. Isn't that lovely? Well, Paul Mellor has watched this broadcast. He's very well acquainted with it, my dears. And as you might know, he's a composer, an arranger, musician of great note, great reputation, and was involved in the coronation, has been commissioned by their majesties going back many years throughout the princedom. And I must make it clear that he did not seek out this channel, but a close familial to him does watch and was a very avid basketeer and turned him onto the River broadcast for a while. So isn't that very nice? Lovely chap by all accounts, the soul of discretion, and very talented. So The Weather of My Being is what the number's called, and it incorporates texts from the Bible, American poetry, and the works of Rabbi Burns. I should also mention, if the broadcast feels different today, it's because I'm recording it instead of on my ancient iPhone, as usual, because I'm so technical and so highfalutin. I'm recording it on a new laptop that I've invested in, even though I can barely afford to do such a thing at the moment. It was a bit of a rash decision, but I'm hoping it works out okay, because it means that I will be able to edit on the trot, because when I'm not sitting here holding forth to you, my dears, I'm actually out and about for most of the rest of the time, up and down the kingdom and abroad. I'm very busy all over the place, and this means that I'll at least be able to bring it with me and edit, but also it means that I might, if I enjoy recording on it, be able to record to you from various locations and submit those recordings either on this channel or perhaps a separate channel for that kind of thing. It has been highly requested, but we're going to see how it goes and how it feels and how it sounds. That's where we are today. Now, on to the mucky subject of Prince Harry. People magazine have been making the headlines because they say that they have been speaking to sources who are close to Harry. And they furnish you with details that I furnished you with a very long time ago. People magazine are playing catch-up with the River broadcast, my dear. But it's all well and good. They confirm that the king keeps the boy at arm's length. The wayward son, he keeps him at arm's length and gently but firmly refuses to capitulate to Harry's demands for an apology and for accountability. This accountability that he insists on so very much. Well, the king isn't having it. No, you're not going to pee on His Majesty's leg and tell him it's raining. And they also confirm that William, and I'm going to use my description here, is incandescent, and that the boy's not for turning. And that he's ignoring phone calls and pleas and begging letters and all this kind of communication. No, he's not having it, our big Willie. Well, it's been over a year since father and son met, albeit very briefly, wasn't it, early last year, when that was their last face-to-face encounter in the flesh. But Queen Camilla was present. His Majesty refused to brush shoulders with little Todge without the wicked stepmother in the house. So obviously that pissed all over Harry's bonfire, didn't it? Well, we are told that the calls and letters to William go unanswered, as do the calls and letters to the king. And we are told that Harry only heard of the king's hospitalisation recently regarding his cancer treatment through the media, not through his father. He is not informed of the king's current condition and his prognosis. And by the way, as an aside, we all know. I mean, those of us in my world, my dear, in our world, we all know. We're privy to what's going on. And we've known for many months, in actual fact. And you might think, well, why wouldn't you share the details with us, River? Why? Absolutely not. It's not something that I would ever even dream for one single moment of sharing on such a platform. I wouldn't even hint at the details that I've been privy to and that I know. It'd be utterly infra-dig to betray a confidence. You understand? But Harry's recent career revolves around that very activity, doesn't it, my dears? Revolves around it. Well, for several years, actually, I told you of the word that was used in whispers from those oh so closely placed in regards to the Wales family, and that word was incandescent. And that word, incandescent, which I've been using for years, came originally from one person in particular, a young aristocrat of minor note, the kind that you will find popping up in some of the glossies such as Tatler and ES magazine from the Stand, this sort of thing. But the words that were uttered in the fallout, during that period of the fallout when there were disparagements against Catherine after the publication of Spare, because remember, even though the king had tried to knock their heads together at previous engagements and said, "Oh, please don't make my last years a misery, boys, please, please get it together, don't make my last years a misery." Well, they ignored him. Well, it was after all that, and then Catherine and William had the kind grace to allow the Sussexes to walk out and about with them, didn't they? After the late Queen Liz popped her clogs and kicked the bucket, and they invited them out and did all this, and then there was the betrayal of the publishing of Spare, and Catherine was disparaged. The words which I did not impart to you at that time when I was told that he was incandescent, the words that I am told that he used were, "He's dead to me. He's dead to me." From the lips of Big Willie. And I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm told that William said words to the effect of the fact that Harry is impervious to the pain he is causing to everyone who has loved him. And he also said, "I can't reason with him. I can't reason with Harry." And I'm told that there has been little to goose egg in the way of mellowing from Prince William from that day to this. Little to goose egg. The intensity of that incandescence has ameliorated somewhat because time has passed, but the sentiment burns incandescent and wilted to the future King William V's grave, or tomb. No, what is it that he's going to end up in? It's a crypt, isn't it? Where the late Queen lays. You know what I mean, my dear, that thing in the ground anyway. The vault, the royal vault. Yeah. And again, I'm going to paraphrase here, but there are also words to the effect spoken. "Glad there is an ocean between us," William said. "I'm glad there is an ocean between us. I don't want to look at him or be near him." So these are all sentiments that I'm told were stated at the time and hold true. Because you've got to remember, my dears, Catherine is a wife and a consort 1,000,000 times more precious than that Bobby Dazzler on her finger, that huge gemmy sapphire, you know, that pales into insignificance when compared to the ardour and the protective love that William has for Catherine. The jewel in William's crown is not that famous gem that adorns the slender finger of the fair Catherine, but the jewel in his crown is his saviour, his redeemer, his Catherine, his Kate. Yes, it is. Kate, whose very life hangs in the balance. And she was dragged all over the coals, wasn't she, by the Sussexes for her icy demeanour and for her frigidity and her coolness and her reluctance in sharing her lip gloss. She didn't want her glossy dough foot smeared all over those hungry lips of the sissy-in-law, picking up the bacteria and the debris of that which the Duchess had sucked and savoured. I don't think so, my dear, not our Catherine. The spittle of a lick-spittle? She doesn't want that anywhere near her dough foot. So instead, Catherine was smeared, and she was sullied, and she was slurred. William is a Cancerian. You've got to bear this in mind, my dear. Like me, like all of the best, he's a Cancerian. Like the late Diana too. He's a Cancerian, and we hunker down, my dear. We're oh so soft inside. Oh, so soft. Don't you tickle us. We're all such a softy, but don't you fuck with us, because we've got a hard shell, and we will hide away. We will put the defences up, and our little pincers at the side will keep you at bay. Do you understand, my dear? Don't mess with us. And by the way, we've got a grudge We're very forgiving because we're very compassionate. Very forgiving indeed. But do we forget? No, my dear, we hold a grudge forever and a day. So that's how long Harry's got to wait for William's forgiveness. Now, to pivot for a second from royalty to the trans issue, I feel that we need to run over this just for a couple of minutes because I've discussed it before at length, and J.K. Rowling's position, my position on the trans issue. I'm not going to rake all over that again, but it is a day for jubilation for some of us because Britain's highest court, the Supreme Court, has declared in a landmark ruling today that transgender women are not legally women. And to any trans people who happen to be watching or tuning in today, whether or not you concur with me or with the ruling handed down by Lord Hodge, and many, many, many trans people, those of the letters community and everything, do concur, just because they are not heard as much as some of the more irrational, or those with a different view. They do. But just to say to you, not that you need my acceptance or my approval, but just to say to you, in case you misunderstand, you are worthy of the same respect afforded to any other human being and to anybody suffering from gender dysphoria, which is extremely real and extremely painful. You are worthy of the same compassion as anybody else that has a disorder. But facts trump feelings, and science trumps sophistry. This has always been my concern and the concern of many, because tolerance has been abused, roundly abused, and acceptance has been taken advantage of in recent years. And I and others will not be cajoled into believing that a trans woman is a woman. A trans woman is a man who is pretending to be a woman, who is posing as a woman or masquerading as a woman. The words don't sound kind, but they're not meant to be kind or unkind. It's just fact. And we have to be able to cope with facts, whoever we are. And I certainly believe that we should be free to express ourselves as we choose to as an adult in the adult years. And I am hugely supportive, and always have been, if it's not hard to guess by looking at me, hugely supportive of self-expression that harms nobody else and that doesn't harm society. But self-ID harms us all, and it harms women, perhaps especially, and in particular. And nobody should have to refer to women as cis women, or recategorize women as biological women, or cis women, or real women. Women are women. And women are the sex class that produce large gametes. Men who are pretending to be women and who live as what is termed trans women, many of whom I know and love, by the way, and adore and fully support, and many of whom agree with me, have the perfect right to invite everybody else in society to join in with their fantasy, but there should be no legal imperative to do so. Absolutely not, my dear. No legal imperative for other people to agree that the sky is green and that the grass is blue. That is a violation of reason and common sense and the human rights of we, the people. Do you understand, my dear? So don't fuck with us. Well, the Supreme Court now confirms that sex is binary. Well, that would be true, actually, whether or not the Supreme Court recognised that and concurred with that or ruled as such. So I don't actually care what the Supreme Court thinks either way, because sex would be binary whether or not they ruled it was. But the fact that they have ruled that sex is binary has to be seen as a positive, beneficial signal. The unanimous decision follows a long battle between the campaign group Women for Scotland and the Scottish Government over the definition of a woman. The 88-page ruling said that the concept of sex is binary, and Lord Hodge told the court the unanimous decision of this court is that the definition of the terms women and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not. Well, it's a triumph of common sense. Now for a question by Blessed by Yeshua, which might have been covered before, but it's worth looking at again for those who weren't privy to the answer. When Prince William becomes king, will Camilla maintain a title, assuming King Charles has passed? We had a Queen Mum before, but what will we have with a stepmom. Well, my dear, if Queen Camilla does outlive the king, and she is older than him, but that's his mebbies, if she does outlive him, then at the very end breath of the king's final gasp, at that very moment, that very second, she ceases to be queen consort and becomes Queen Dowager, the widow of a king. And just the very same as she is not at this current time styled Queen Consort Camilla, although she is a Queen Consort. She's not styled Queen Consort Camilla, she's styled Queen Camilla. And so just the same, she won't be styled Queen Dowager Camilla either, because Dowager is just a type of queen the same as consort or regnant. She will remain in public consciousness as Her Majesty Queen Camilla. Yes, so there won't be any dramatic change there, although she will be a Queen Dowager. Catherine will become Queen Consort, of course, but styled Her Majesty the Queen, and, as Camilla is now. So Catherine, even as a consort, will be known as the Queen, as Camilla is now, but also she'll be known as Queen Catherine, as the Queen is known as Queen Camilla now. Remember the invitations for the coronation of King Charles and Queen Camilla. That's how it was expressed there, rather than the King and the Queen. So there's flexibility there. Now, of course, when the late Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was named as such, it was a useful device to distinguish between the fact that she and her daughter were both called Elizabeth. Two queens of the same name could be confusing, but Camilla, of course, is not a mother to the royal blood. There is also a bit of a myth that Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Mother, was the first Queen Mother, and that the role was invented for her. Well, it is true to say that actually it was sort of formalised around her, and nobody had really been known as the Queen Mother as firmly as she was, mainly because she was so long-lived as well, of course, and she was in the public consciousness for a long time. And she was a queen consort for a much shorter time than predicted, because George VI died pretty young, didn't he? But it is certainly not the case that she was the only Queen Mother in history, because the term was in usage since at least 1560. So that's rather a long time, isn't it, my dear? 4 mothers of a reigning monarch. And actually, I found this card recently amongst all my vintage ephemera, and it revolves around, where is she? Oh, my Queen Alexandra there at the side. There she is, our little mascot, Queen Alexandra. Well, this was actually a mourning card for the nation's mourning. The nation joins with the royal family in mourning the death of one, I haven't got my glasses on, sorry my dears, one as Princess of Wales, Queen of England and Mother of the King, has during 62 years won a place of a special affection in the hearts of the people. Thy voice is now silent, thy heart is now cold. Where thy smile and thy welcome oft met us of old, we miss thee and mourn thee in silence unseen, and dwell on the memory of joy that has been. And as you can see, it says, in loving memory of the Queen Mother, Her Majesty Queen Alexandra, who passed away at Sandringham House on Friday, November 20th, 1925, 100 years ago. Isn't that something, my dears? Coming up almost exactly. In November it'll be 100 years since the passing of old Alex. In her 81st year, laid to rest in St. George's Chapel, Windsor. May her soul rest in peace. Indeed. So I was able to illustrate that to you. Well, as for the Sussexes and our dear Meghan, it's been a week of musicality and the musicals. And we had this little Orphan Annie affair, because she often portrays herself as a sort of lost soul, doesn't she? From the childhood, this rags and riches tale that she spins. She presents herself as an Annie Mudge, a little Orphan Annie, dreaming about tomorrow when she becomes a princess. Being an entrepreneur can start young. By the way, all these years later, and I'm still selling cookies. Yeah, and Prince Harry paid a high price for your cookie, didn't he, my dear? His family and his reputation. Not that his reputation, by the way, ever impressed me. Even all those years ago, I always thought that he was a prankster and a hoodlum. She went to see Audrey MacDonald in Gypsy, And can I please ask why she goes on walkabout as if she's Princess Margaret Rose behind the scenes at the Royal Variety performance? That's the quiz. Can I please ask you why this random woman is strolling about as if she's the late Princess Margaret Rose? I won't have it. I won't stand for it. Greeting the cast. And all these young creatures are paraded out to rejoice at her appearance, and they're in rapture for no reason known to them. Surely they've got no clue who this woman is, this damsel, this wench. Who is this rich white lady? They must be asking, and they must inquire. Well, of course, spring has sprung, and so what does she do? She rolls out a fruit basket. A fruit basket. You couldn't make it up, could you, my dear? Holly Fields says the main thing I see in Confessions of a Female Founder is just how immature Meghan really is. It's like watching a teenage gal having a slumber party and playing host for the first time. I've actually lived through 4 teenagers, so I've watched this occur many times. Grown mature women, 27-ish and above, do not act like giggling high school gals. Her entire show is just a plain waste of time. Much of what she says is utterly ridiculous. Well, you pinpoint the age where girlishness ends at 27-ish and above, my dear, and I'm not disabusing you of that notion. But what I will say is that generations ago, 27 years old, gals are well into their maturity and well over the stage of girlishness. To be 27 years old was the prime years of womanhood. You know, people lived for fewer years and had children and a family at a much younger age. 27 was an age of maturity for the vast majority of women. So it's not that I disagree with you, but let's frame it and put it in perspective of the generations past. It's only in these recent decades where you see this foolishness. You see this foolishness amongst middle ages and beyond. Not saying that we can't all have a silly little moment of fun and giggles, and it's about being childlike rather than childish. Do you understand, my dear? I can be extremely childlike, let's face it, my dear, and perhaps immature to some degree. I won't deny it, but childishness is the vulgarity that we see paraded on archetypes and confessions, where you really don't feel that you're in the company of a mature woman. As you suggest, my dear, what you end up munching on is word salad. Yes, word salad and sophistry soup. And it tastes disgusting. Episode 2 features Reshma Sujani, founder of Girls Who Code. And it begins with a very gushy start. Surprise, surprise. I'm not reviewing the whole thing. No way, my dear, although I did listen to most of it for the sake of the broadcast. She lavishes praise all over Meghan, as usual. So no change there. But eventually, I will say, although it is boring and dull as dishwater throughout the whole affair, Meghan does shut up for a lot of it and just listens and lets the other woman talk. So that's a blessing. That's a blessing. And it makes it slightly bearable, but not at all enjoyable, nevertheless. As you say, it feels like there is only an audience of 13-year-old dorks who they are trying to appease or who they're able to talk to, because nobody else would get anything out of this. No mature women over the age of 13, and even the ones who are 13 and the ones under the age of 13 will be bored boobless and won't learn much from it, but at least they'll feel they're among their peers because it's so jejune, the whole affair. And they drone on with all this misplaced feminism throughout the entire thing, and misogynoir and all of these kind of gripes they have against society, my dears. Any of us who have had any experience in the real world, as I have, with leaders, female leaders of all colours, by the way, in many positions, senior positions, chief executives. Hell, we've even seen it in a few of our prime ministers. Going back to the 70s with Mrs. Thatcher. Savvy, successful, driven, ambitious women, many of whom came from what would be thought of as nothing. You know, in the case of Mrs. Thatcher, you know, the daughter of a greengrocer. None of them thought it necessary to brandish this sort of high schooler mentality and the inanity seen in Confessions of a Female Philander. Catherine, on the other hand, has been spending time in the natural world, which provides a sense of balance and belonging. For young people, access to nature is so important for helping to build confidence, self-belief, life skills, and a sense of perspective. That is why organisations like Scouts are so important. And last month, Catherine travelled to the Lake District, the beautiful Lake District, to meet the new Chief Scout, Dwayne Fields, and youngsters on the shores of Lake Windermere. Isn't it gorgeous? Taking us outside into the fresh air, and a photograph of a dog was shared to celebrate National Pet Day. Oh, blimey. Alistair Runcorn poses the quiz. Why is Prince Andrew reported to be arrogant and foul-mouthed? His mother epitomised selfless elegance. Well, I don't know how he turned out that way, my dear. I don't know why he turned out to be perceived as arrogant, rude and foul-mouthed, but actually something interesting happened the other day which made something dawn on me, and that was footage of the late Duke, Prince Philip, that you've all seen when he was swearing and he was asking the photographer to just take the fucking picture, he said with a look of exasperation. Do you remember that one? And of course I've got a sense of humour of it. I've adored seeing that footage in the past, and it sort of made me chuckle. Because it's a moment of candour. But on consideration, it's actually quite appalling. You know, he kind of gets a bit of a pass because, especially since his passing, I mean, he kind of went under the radar in his final years, really, when he was alive. But since his passing, he's been hailed as a hero to many, and I understand why. And, you know, he did some very splendid things in the course of his life. But because of that popularity, he gets a bit of a pass for bad behaviour, you know. And apparently that photographer was fanning about a little bit here and there, and they were all getting a little bit vexed with the photographer. And the quip from Prince Philip made a few people laugh. But the truth is that it was petulant, it was impatient, and it was downright rude. I'm sorry, it was downright rude of him to do such a thing and to dress down the photographer in that way, however frivolous. And actually, to me, it looked like he was genuinely, Prince Philip was genuinely running out of patience with the photographer and meant what he said. And we all know that he had a very wonderful side. The Duchess of Edinburgh, our Sophie, speaks so highly of him as a father-in-law and how gentle and wonderful he could be. But this is public humiliation for one of the late Queen's subjects, you understand? It was a public humiliation, and there was no care on the part of Prince Philip for the exposure that it would cause, and it crosses a line, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that I lack a sense of humour, but I do regard dignity under the royal house, and it crosses the line. And what actually I see in that clip is a cantankerous old man who should know better, under the auspices of the concept of noblesse oblige. Do you understand, my dear? So when we're considering Prince Andrew and some of his reported behaviours, we have to bear in mind that he was also in the company of that father, who was a role model not only to the nation, but to Andrew himself, who was a role model, and he saw this chap with great charisma and great popularity being adored for his abrasiveness, his dry sense of humour, his quick wit, and some vulgarity. You know, he had a mouth like a sewer, did the late Philip. And monkey see, monkey do. Do you understand? Monkey see, monkey do. You know, Andrew only had two parents, the late Queen and the late Duke. The late Queen wasn't around as much as some mothers were, because she had a royal duty to fulfil. Perhaps out of all of them, Edward possibly spent more time with the late Queen than his siblings, and that's possibly why it is Edward out of all of them, including Anne, who has Elizabeth's touch. I see it so very much, not only in looks, but in character and reserve, and perhaps that is because he spent more time in the late Queen's presence. I don't know, I'm just holding forth, you understand. But perhaps Andrew aims for the qualities of the late Philip, but misses the mark. Goes a little bit wide of the mark, because he's not equipped with the same charisma, my dear, is he, and the same charm. So it just falls flat. And whereas Philip was able to disguise some of his rude moments like this under the auspices of charm. Andrew fails and is just perceived as one great big ungrateful. Virginia Giuffre. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since we spoke about her plight, and I'm not going to relay the ins and outs of that saga since I spoke on the subject a week or two ago. I'm sure you're all privy to the goings on. There have been twists and turns and accusations and family dramas, but needless to say, she has surpassed the 4 days to live that she told us that she had been told that she had. So we were all shocked and surprised to see that she still lives and still breathes, doesn't she, my dears? And she was thriving enough to give the finger to the Australian press and is quoted as saying, "Get the fuck out of here." Seen for the first time here leaving hospital, and she was healing from her bruises very well, wasn't she? I could hardly see any evidence of them. And as for her kidney failure, well, her agent said Virginia is slowly improving, and this agent of hers once represented Monica Lewinsky. Indeed, the young lady who savoured the membership of President Clinton, didn't she? She savoured that membership of President Clinton, and she left the remnants of his pleasure to fester on her black gown in the back of her closet. Isn't that something, my dears? Isn't that something? Well, Virginia snuck out of the back door to avoid a large pack of the press, but her efforts were in vain. Well, Virginia and her spokesperson can make all the excuses they want to in regards to her confusion, her medications, her depressions, and her vulnerabilities, but that does not alter the fact that she embroidered her account of what happened with the bus driver, and in doing so, she besmirched the reputation of that bus driver. And there were no traumatised kiddies inside either, as we've been told by their parents. So if you're going to be clumsy with the story, my dear, and suffer all kind of misremembrances due to the drugs or the depressions and the sadnesses, my sympathy ends where your besmirchment of others begins. In this case, it was the bus driver. But who else has needlessly suffered because of your misremembrances? We know that Alan Dershowitz was one of them. Was Prince Andrew another? That's the quiz. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate your company and look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast. Cheerio, my dears, and toodle pip.